Please do sit down. So it's time for our reading. Don't know whether anyone's... No one else is expecting to do that. Good. So our reading this morning is from... Oh, it is you. No, I thought that. Oh, it's all right. It's okay.
So our reading is taken from Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 to 17. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and, if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in the one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Lynn. So today is Mother's Day. Because we don't discriminate at this church, we have some flowers to give out a bit later to all the ladies and anyone who wants to feel that they want to identify in that way. And actually, that's not kind of a joke in a sense. If you want to take some flowers, take some flowers and be blessed. Okay, lovely. But actually, today is also, and probably beforehand, Mothering Sunday, which is not the same. Mothering Sunday is often said is about the church. And so it's lovely to welcome you all here. We're down a bit in numbers today. I'm guessing people are perhaps visiting family, etc. As Wikipedia says, of course that's the fount of all knowledge, or not, Mothering Sunday is the day honouring mother churches, the day when one is baptised, the church where one is baptised and becomes a child of the church. So let's just pause for a moment and think back to your baptism. You may have been very little, okay? But at least you probably know where you were baptised. So just think about that church. It might have been here, actually, or it may have been somewhere else. You might have been a child, you might have been an adult. You may have got baptised in a font, or by a font, or in a river, or in a baptismal pool, or whatever. Whatever it was, just think back to that moment and just give thanks to God for that church. May that church still be operating in one form or another today. Well, we may not be there, but we are here. And in a sense, we've adopted this church as our mother church, and she has adopted us into her folds. And we want to think a bit about, as we think about that, about what makes church church. It's not just the building, obviously, it's the people inside. But it's not just the people, because it's to do with the attitudes that we have one with another. Well, you'll be pleased to know that as we've been thinking about, might be thinking about what qualities this mother church might have, there's a group of people meeting to kind of obliquely think about that. I say obliquely because actually we've been asked as a little group to think about two particular questions. We've mentioned these before. Firstly, as a church of 3 or 4 different congregations, so if you remember, we've got our 8:30, we've got 10, which meet weekly, and then we've got Messy Church and the Ark, which meet monthly. How do we build a sense of unity and family as one church and support one another so that each congregation can grow and flourish? And the second question that group has been looking at is bearing in mind that we have seen a reduction in the numbers of families attending our 10 a.m. and, we look around, it's Mothering Sunday. That's quite astonishing. If you think back not too many years, Mothering Sunday was one of those events where people would gather to the church, and we're just not getting the families coming as often. And yet, people are choosing to come to Messy Church, which is that monthly one. How do we best increase in these... I'll start that again. How do we best nurture the faith of our younger families and children across our wider church? Well, I hope you can see that those two questions are kind of linked with that question, what makes a church a church? What qualities do we need to be a mothering and nurturing Christian community? If we get those essential qualities right, then we'll go a long way to start answering those other two questions and addressing some of the issues to do with that. So there are various, I'm sure you've come across many, just ignore Andy, he's just working on the camera. There are various definitions of what makes a church a church. Here are some. A guy called Michael Moyner, who is a Church of England minister and writer, theologian, missiologist. He talks about when the church began, and he says this: rather than bequeathing a church to us, Jesus handed over to his followers the means for creating church. He left them with his teachings, the Jewish scriptures, our Old Testament, the sacraments of baptism and Holy Communion, leadership based on the apostles, and with ongoing support, the promise of his continued presence through the Spirit. He left behind not a Lego church, but Lego bricks, which I think is quite a good way of putting it. Come back to Lego in a bit. I quite like that picture. If you've ever played with Lego, you will know that there is a joy in both the building and then the taking apart and rebuilding and starting again. At least I enjoy that. So, church, I think, as I reflect on that, is adaptable to changing circumstances. Not a fixed thing, but an organic living thing, appropriate for a mother, I think, that will change over time, adapting to circumstance. Providing we have each of these elements present, Michael Moyner suggests Jesus' teachings, the sacraments, an apostolic style of leadership, and the sense that the Holy Spirit is both present and active amongst us and being listened to, then we can call ourselves church. And the shape will depend on need. There's been a lot of thought being put in recently about what shape church should be. And you will have heard the term fresh expressions. And there are quite a number of different, quite unusual forms of church springing up all around the country. We have one here, the Ark, as a fresh expression of church. And we're hatching a bit of a plan, which is, because sometimes people feel a bit awkward about coming to the Ark to find out what it's like, we're going to have a go at doing an art service on a Sunday morning with those who are present. So we'll let you know when that's going to be. So it'll be just a little bit different. Anyway, that's one of the things that the little group has been thinking about. So, Fresh Expressions movement. And Michael Moyner, who I mentioned earlier, he's written a lot about Fresh Expressions. But the Fresh Expressions movement tend to look at, as a group of people start kind of getting together, when does it actually become a church? When does it stop being a club? And when does it start being a church? And they look at these things. Oh, by the way, Charles, you need to put not me up, but the screen. Okay. So that first point, adaptable to changing circumstances. Okay. So these 4 attributes: serving people outside the current reach of themselves. So an outward-looking focus. Listening to those people and entering their culture, making disciples a priority, and also it needs to be intentionally being formed as a church. So, people who are in it are thinking, we are now being church. So church should be missional, contextual, formational in terms of growing disciples, and ecclesial in sense of knowing that they're part of a bigger universal church. And if you can put the next point up. A nurturing sacred community set and operating within the ambient secular culture and reaching out to it. Yeah, that's a bit technical, isn't it? But I hope you get that sense of nurture and also that sort of being formed, in a sense, around the culture that is out there, not becoming a microculture here, but kind of being adaptable to what's going on outside. That's a very difficult line to draw. But anyway, I won't go into that. Here's a much simpler way of thinking about it. From Archbishop Rowan Williams forward to one of the foundational books for Fresh Expressions, Mission Shaped Church. Church is what happens when people encounter the risen Jesus and commit themselves to sustaining and deepening that encounter in their encounter with each other. So, church happens when people encounter the risen Jesus and commit themselves to sustaining and deepening that encounter with each other. So basically, next point, it's where we meet together to help us meet with Christ. And hopefully, that's what is happening. I like that. And church is also where we're all disciples together, helping each other to live our Christian lives out there. So those are a few points up on the screen that perhaps help us to think about church. In his letter to the Colossians, Paul puts it really nicely. It seems that he wants to stress that the quality of our relationships is of utmost importance. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, we are first loved by God, and then we love each other. We come together here today as a response to God's love. And so as we gather, we would expect our attitudes to one another to be loving and love-driven. Well, I think we do reasonably well here. We're a lovely, loving congregation. But let's just hear Paul's encouragement again. Clothe yourselves with compassion, with kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. and let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body. Love. So at this point, I think we should commit ourselves to those things. We may not always get it right, but hey, we're human. That's fine. The point is that as church, as Christians, we are to aspire to such things. So, as part of our services, often, we've reinstituted over the last 40 years or so a very ancient tradition. It goes back to about the 2nd and 3rd century, which is the sharing of a sign of peace. So let's commit ourselves to that loving relationship one with another by sharing the peace now. The peace of the Lord be always with you. So let's share that sign of peace one with another. So if I've missed lots of people out, it's not because I'm not loving you or being peaceful. It's because my hand's starting to hurt. So, church then is defined firstly by the quality of God's love for us and our recognition in that. And then by the quality of our relationships one with another. And Paul goes on to suggest that church should then be a place where we learn ways of learn the ways of Christ, a training ground, so to speak. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, he says. It's to be a place where we worship God together and with gratitude in your heart sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God. And a place where we go from to put that faith into action. Whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So it seems, as I've been reflecting on the church, that our mother should be adaptable to change, nurturing of faith, and reaching out in our community to community. She is a wonderful mix of personalities who are drawn together by their common knowledge of the love of God and God's love for them. She is held together by that love and the expression of that love between her children, you and me. She is the community in which faith is nurtured, and she encourages us to be Christians out in the world. So, church, the mother church, spare a thought for not just this church, and a prayer for the Church of England and the church through the world. We're going through changing times, and there are strains and stresses, different understandings of different things. And particularly at the moment, the Church of England is discussing and debating the whole gamut, I suppose, of what we might call human sexuality and gender, which needs to be done with wisdom and compassion and tenderness, as well as intellectual sort of robustness as well. So it's causing problems. It is. And we can't get away from that. But with God's grace and God's love, we can see a way through so that we can still be church together. We've done it before, and we will no doubt have to do it again, because when the church has to unbuild itself and rebuild itself in every generation, that causes strains and stresses. So pray for our mother church, on this Sunday and also going on. Now, this is our Explore service, which we're gradually getting back to sort of ideas behind the Explore Together from Christian Aid. So I've got two ideas for you. There's a question. Bearing in mind that we all learn differently, what does or could church provide that would help nurture my faith. So this is a very, I'm not thinking about how you want to encourage me, but this is a personal question to you. So you might just want to pause for a moment, or you might want to turn to your neighbour and just have a think about that. Depends on how you best do that. What could we be doing to help nurture and encourage faith amongst us that perhaps we're not doing at the moment? Or perhaps what are the things that are already on offer at church that I could step into that would help encourage and nurture my faith? I mentioned before at the beginning of Lent that perhaps one thing that we could think about doing is, perhaps just for a period of time, but it'd be great to do it all the time, is commit ourselves to coming to church more regularly. And I know many of you do, but I know some find that more difficult. And it is sometimes hard with family responsibilities, etc. But there may be other things as well that we could do just to help nurture that faith. But also, I've got some Lego at the front here. And I thought that on Mothering Sunday it'd be a good idea to just recommit ourselves to the church and to the building of Christ Church here. So I'm going to put the Lego at the front here. And if you feel that it would be helpful to you to come and get a brick and put it down on some other bricks, just as an act of commitment, then do feel free. So a bit of time to think about the question, either in pairs or on your own. And if you like to, come forward and place a brick and just recommit ourselves to God's wonderful mothering love through his church. So, 5 minutes or so. Let's just break up. So the Lego's going to stay there, and if you want at any point during the rest of the service, come forward. I often think building a church out of Lego would have been very helpful. It would have made our roof project a lot cheaper, although there'd been a lot of bricks. Anyway, never mind. Right. So just out of interest, has anyone got any lightning bolt things that we're not doing that would really help you? You might not want to share it now, but you could always share it a bit later. Yeah, we'll come. Dawn, do you want to say something now? No. All right. It's all right. We'll come back to that. Yeah.
It's okay. Sue wants to say something.
All right. Oh, Sue. Okay.
Hang on.
Cool.
It isn't a story, it's real life. When I used to live in Rawdon and went to St. Peter's Church, one particular Mothering Sunday, the children were going up to collect the flower gifts for the mothers, and my youngest, Emma, went up, and when she came back, she didn't give them to me, she gave them to a young lady sitting near us, another Susan actually, she hadn't been able to have children, and she was in tears. And so I was really proud of Emma. But not long after that, Susan, the other one, announced she was pregnant. And she went on to have 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. So, wonderful.
Right, thank you, Sue. Thanks. That's a lovely story, actually. Well, I'm at the end of what I need to say. Do keep thinking about that. Think about how we can help nurture faith. If you want to get involved in the steering group that James and I are involved with, it's kind of fairly open. We had another person join us the other day, which was lovely. So it's a good group to be sort of thinking through these issues. And then we're going to take ideas back to the PCC in the not too distant future.